Hi, thanks so much for joining me. I'm King Loki. I'm the editor of Death Wish Poetry magazine and the host of the Demon Toast podcast. And I'd like to thank you for checking out this video. This is a series where I interview the writers that are published through Death Wish, whether that's through our digital magazine or our upcoming physical magazine to be announced very soon. I just want you to know that our writers come from all walks of life. Some of them are experienced, seasoned, practiced writers with books and publications that span digital and print, and others are just starting out. Some of them are my age, in their 30s. Others are in their 20s, and still others are even older than me. And I just think it's fantastic that we here at Death Wish Poetry can cast a shadow like that, as broad and dark, that allows all these different incredibly talented individuals to shine.
Hey everyone, my name is Marisa Jade, and I will be reading to you one of my poems that got published in Death Wish Poetry magazine. So this is called The World Hated Me First. Persecution, the art of bloodshed, the crack of a whip against my back, the splitting of my soul. One half is alive, and the other half burns alive with rage. Scene 1. The Girl with Four Heads. A girl with brown hair and black eyes can be seen sitting down on a throne. The throne is just as dark and as soulless as her eyes. The girl is wearing a long white gown and is barefoot. Her hands and feet are covered in black sludge. The girl has no name, and shall not be named for the rest of this poem. The girl is fully functional. She looks like a human. One head, two hands, 2 feet. The girl speaks in free verse. I am not like other girls. Most girls have 2 heads. I have 4. Allow me to show them to you. The girl stands up and rips her body in half, almost as if she was wearing a costume made of silicone. She shows the audience her true form, a girl with 4 heads. Each head could be separated and become its own being. The girl spoke again. Allow me to introduce myself. Or should I say, allow us to introduce ourselves. I was feared by many. I became the enemy of songbirds, actors, and actresses. I became an enemy to writers and authors, and I even got pupils and professors to fear me. Fear me. Fear me like how you fear the reaper. You can't escape my holy beauty. I came home one day, after the incident, and the voices in my head were speaking to me. They were angry. They told me to write my feelings down, so I did. This is what happens when you are a bitch and disrespect the quiet girl. You become a part of the sea of abominations. Scene 2. The Sea of Abominations. You, as the reader, are inside my head and can read my thoughts. Each imagined conversation can be seen in a bright glass orb. The Sea of Abominations appears. The Sea of Abominations, like the name suggests, is an abomination. The Sea of Abominations is a young woman with 3 heads, one for each past instructor that I had in a previous life. Q&A with the Sea of Abominations, written in blood. Why let my enemies sing? Reject. Why am I the understudy? Outcast. Why do you rebuke me? Jesus. Do you rebuke me in the name of Jesus? Wicca. Do you hate me? No. Are you jealous of me? Away with you. Are you insecure? Satan. Tear my heart out into a million little pieces. Mark my body with your words, and return your soul back to its sender. Forget you, forget me, and forget that damn letter. Just burn it already. Burn it right out of my skull.
Beautiful stuff.
Hi everyone, my name is Marisa Jade, and I will be reading to you one of my poems that got published in Death Wish Poetry magazine. So this is called The World Hated Me First. Persecution, the art of bloodshed, the crack of a whip against my back, the splitting of my soul. One half is alive, and the other half burns alive with rage. Scene 1. The Girl with Four Heads. A girl with brown hair and black eyes can be seen sitting down on a throne. The throne is just as dark and as soulless as her eyes. The girl is wearing a long white gown and is barefoot. Her hands and feet are covered in black sludge. The girl has no name, and shall not be named for the rest of this poem. The girl is fully functional. She looks like a human. One head, two hands, 2 feet. The girl speaks in free verse. I am not like other girls. Most girls have 2 heads. I have 4. Allow me to show them to you. The girl stands up and rips her body in half, almost as if she was wearing a costume made of silicone. She shows the audience her true form, a girl with 4 heads. Each head could be separated and become its own being. The girl spoke again. Allow me to introduce myself. Or should I say, allow us to introduce ourselves. I was feared by many. I became the enemy of songbirds, actors, and actresses. I became an enemy to writers and authors, and I even got pupils and professors to fear me. Fear me. Fear me like how you fear the reaper. You can't escape my holy beauty. I came home one day, after the incident, and the voices in my head were speaking to me. They were angry. They told me to write my feelings down, so I did. This is what happens when you are a bitch and disrespect the quiet girl. You become a part of the sea of abominations. Scene 2. The Sea of Abominations. You, as the reader, are inside my head and can read my thoughts. Each imagined conversation can be seen in a bright glass orb. The Sea of Abominations appears. The Sea of Abominations, like the name suggests, is an abomination. The Sea of Abominations is a young woman with 3 heads, one for each past instructor that I had in a previous life. Q&A with the Sea of Abominations, written in blood. Why let my enemies sing? Reject. Why am I the understudy? Outcast. Why do you rebuke me? Jesus. Do you rebuke me in the name of Jesus? Wicca. Do you hate me? No. Are you jealous of me? Away with you. Are you insecure? Satan. Tear my heart out into 1,000,000 little pieces. Mark my body with your words, and return your soul back to its sender. Forget you, forget me, and forget that damn letter. Just burn it already. Burn it right out of my skull.
Beautiful stuff. Hi there, welcome to Death Wish Poetry's first author spotlight. This is a new series we're doing where we interview and spotlight some of the awesome writers that we publish, and as part of our promotion of them. So, you know, if you're someone who has been published with Death Wish, hit us up, email us, and chances are we'll interview you too. With that being the case, today we've got Marisa Jade, one of our brilliant, awesome writers. She's an incredibly talented poet, and she's here today to talk about her process, what makes her tick, and her writing. Marisa, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I've never had a bad day. By the way, you do like to be addressed as Marisa Jade, right? Like Marisa, right?
Yeah.
Just
Some of my followers like to call me MJ as well.
Okay.
Whatever works.
Yeah, when we first connected, I actually thought it was a pen name and that it was like a Star Wars thing. There's a character called Mara Jade that is like Luke Skywalker's wife or something, but
Yeah.
that is not the case. So, Anyway, what would you say motivates you to write in general?
I'd say there's a couple of things. As you know, I am a Christian poet, I am a fiction writer, and I'm also a playwright. So, you know, God would be the main motivator. But I would say music also motivates me as well. I listen to a lot of classical music when I write and especially when I read as well.
Cool. When you say classical, what do you mean? Do you mean like Mozart, Bach, or do you mean like, like Led
Just in
Zeppelin?
general, I don't really listen to a particular composer. I do listen to Beethoven, Mozart, Vivaldi, all of them.
Cool. Oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting. Now, would you say that you're an ecstatic, emotional writer, or do you plan these ahead of time? The world hated me, which is the world hated me first, rather. That's the full title.
Right.
That was the first thing we published, and I thought it was such an incredible piece. But that is a very emotional piece, but it has distinguishable structures and multiple
Right.
like sections to it.
Right.
Let me expand on my question with the simple quote. So there's this man you might have heard of called named George R. R. Martin. He wrote Game of Thrones, and he says there's two kinds of writers. You may disagree with this also. Down with
Right.
that. But he says two kinds of writers. There are gardeners and there are architects. Architects know everything that goes into their piece. They know the beginning, the middle, the end, the characters, where they come from, and they just plop it all down. It might take forever, but they do it. Gardeners, they plant their seeds, they start trimming, they cut this and that, and maybe after 50 years it's done, you know.
Right.
So how do you come at your work, right? Because I could see both being the case for you.
Yeah. I would say for me, I guess it depends on what project I'm working on. I can be a little bit of both. For The World Hated Me First, I was definitely a very emotional type of writer. There was a lot of emotions I was going through when I wrote it. There was a lot of confusion, there was a lot of anger, a lot of sadness, and when you read my piece, you definitely feel that. But
Yeah.
also with bigger projects, especially if I'm like doing like the plot, I know exactly like usually what happens is I know the beginning, I know the very end, but I don't know like everything else. So it's like, hey, you just gotta write it. So it's what you gotta do.
Yeah, truer words were never spoken. At the end of the day, you just gotta fucking write it. Like
Right, exactly.
I get there with my work sometimes where I'm like, what does Shatter do next? Like, it's like just write it. Stop overthinking it. Like just fucking do it. It does vary by the piece, and at the end of the day, whatever works, right? I find personally that writer's block is an issue with planning. Like when I don't fully understand a piece or what I'm going for,
Yeah.
I just eventually reach a point where I'm stuck in there's an old Charlie Chaplin movie where he's working at a factory and he falls on the conveyor belt and you see him like stuck in the gears. That's how I get. Maybe I'll
Yeah.
throw a clip of it here. But like, point is that like, do you find that writer's block is a problem or, you know?
Sometimes. There actually is a quote, I believe it was by Stephen King that said it. He said if you're unmotivated to write, read. If you're unmotivated to read, write. Or something like that.
That's a good maxim to live by. A lot of professional writers will tell you to write every day, and that's a hard thing to do.
It is.
I say that as a working class writer myself. So
Right.
like I happen to have a job where I can do that. I can write every day, but yeah, I agree. You should be reading nonstop, not just because your sort of will to write ebbs and flows, but because like you got to be taking in other influences. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, you're living in a hole in the wall, not experiencing the world while so much art is out there begging to be, experienced. So I think that's a great quote. That's a good point too. Hey,
Right.
I wanted to expand on the world hated me first, because there is
Yeah.
kind of a biblical rhythm to the piece. Did you want to speak to that? I mean, it seems like in a certain sense you become like or the speaker rather becomes like the beast of revelation or something. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a Jewish person. My knowledge of the New Testament is very limited.
Right, of
So
course.
enlighten me and our viewers, listeners.
Sure. So, with the world hating me first, of course, the title very much came from Jesus. I believe in the book of John, that's when he tells his disciples that, hey, just remember if the world hates you, just know that it hated me first. If you want, I'd also be happy to explain some of the sections. So, in the poem, there are 6 sections. There's quite a couple where I don't want to say like I become like certain biblical figures, but I do kind of like understand like their roles. So, like for example, there is a section where I title it "The Sea of Abominations." I believe it was one that you said that you very much enjoyed the most out of all of them. It was actually my favorite one that I wrote.
Right.
And towards the end of the poem, you kind of see the phrase, what is it? No, away with you, Satan. And it was
Yeah.
actually something that Jesus had said to Satan when he tried tempting him in the desert after fasting for 40 days. And it was during that point where I sort of felt like Satan, what it was like to feel like the devil. So, and I think it's pretty crazy.
Well, it can be, sure. I mean, like, the Bible, I mean, obviously you have your religious beliefs, but the Bible is
Yeah.
first and foremost a work of literature.
Right.
And, obviously, like, to you, it is gospel truth, yes. Like, not here to dispute that. But, like, the only interface you really get with, like, God or anything like that is this written word. So, what are you engaging with? You're engaging with it as literature, and you being a poet, of course, you're going to do that sort of projection where you're like, oh, Abraham doing all this stuff, or Mr. Jesus, in the Garden of
Yeah.
Gethsemane, Lord, take this cup from my mouth.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. What are you any particular denomination of Christianity?
I'm
You don't mind me asking.
non-denominational. I
Okay,
don't
that's cool.
really I just feel like I never really fit into a particular church.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Sure, sure. And that's probably why you can hang with someone weird like me, some weird, like, atheist, quasi pagan weirdo like me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Um, it helps that we're respectful of people's beliefs, too. So, some people are
Right,
not.
absolutely.
We live in scary times, so I understand why people get so, like, like they hear Christianity and they run. But
Yeah.
honestly, we're talking about things that are much broader than any one person. And, like, someone like you who's, like, a Christian and, you get something out of Christianity, there's really, like, I don't, you know what I mean? So I
Yeah,
think.
exactly.
So I think that's cool, though. I mean, like, Mr. Satan isn't really given much character in the Bible, unfortunately, because he's not really a part of it. Like, he shows up to tempt Jesus in the desert in that one sequence, but there's obviously a whole wealth of literature expanding his identity. Actually, here, let's look at that real fast. The world hated me first because, like, you do some cool stuff. Q&A with the Sea of Abominations, written in blood. Why let my enemies sing, reject? Why am I the understudy, outcast? Why do you rebuke me, Jesus? Do you rebuke me in the name of Jesus, Wicca? Do you hate me? No. Are you jealous of me? Away with you? Are you insecure? Satan. What's going on there? Because I loved that. It was almost like Gertrude Stein's buttons or something. Like was it just word association, or is there something deeper going on there? Like
You
Wicca.
know,
Like, whoa. Like,
it's
are you?
so funny how you would ask that because I'm actually looking at it right now.
Sure.
Oh, when the name or the phrase like the Sea of Abominations kind of like came into mind, the reason why I wrote like, oh, Q&A with the Sea of Abominations written in blood, I kind of just like see this character with like multiple heads or multiple eyes. And the thing about me as an artist is that when I'm naming my characters or when a name just like comes to me naturally, I automatically like envision my character and even like the color palette. So I actually do imagine like the Sea of Abominations to be a woman with three heads, and she's got like this aura of like white and red, and she's like almost like bathing in neurons. So I actually think it's really cool. But when I think of like the three heads, I kind of envision like the Trinity when it comes to arts. For me, it would be choir, theater, and creative writing. So each of the heads kind of almost like symbolize like different teachers that I had at the time, and
Oh, you meant
some of
for
the
you.
questions
Okay.
like the why let my enemies sing. It reminded me of back in high school, for example. There was this one girl who auditioned at the very last minute to get this solo, and I was supposed to get it, but she ended up getting it. So
Right, right.
or like with me being the understudy, I think that's also where my love of theater and playwriting came from. I did take a couple of years in theater, and I took, I think, 5 years in choir. And but every time I would get a role in theater, I would either be somewhere in the background or I would have like a small role.
Hmm.
But, when I'm writing my own stuff,
Hmm.
I could be whatever I want to be. I
Right,
can
yeah.
be the main character.
You're the
Or,
you're the composer, you're the director now.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm not just the the understudy or the actor, but I'm also the playwright.
Oscar
You know?
Wilde has a quote, a really cool quote, where he says that the novelist's first novel is always the novelist himself as Jesus or Faustus, you know? And if you look at, pick a writer, it doesn't matter. Stephen fucking King, he wrote Carrie, you know? What does she do? She goes mad with power at the end, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you're either sacrificing yourself or destroying everyone in the process. It's a pretty great quote. So I think that that's pretty cool. It is true too. Writing is a very solitary art, or it can be rather. I
Yeah.
think what we do, as poets, as novelists, you're a playwright, I am not. But as writers, a lot of what we do is reflection and is self-expression. Something I am wondering too is, you promote yourself as a Christian poet. That's very important to your identity. Go ahead, tell us about that. And also, I'm wondering, how does your religion relate to your self-expression? You've given me some stuff, obviously, but I don't know. Is there anything else that you'd like to expand on in that regard?
Well, I've always just kind of believed that no matter what your beliefs are, because let's face it, we all go down different paths. You don't come from the same walk of life as I have. So
Hmm.
I've always just kind of believed that you should just be honest. You should be open with your beliefs because it is a part of who you are. And Christianity, it does have a huge influence in my life. Like I can remember, like even when I was a kid, um, I've sort of like felt like I was always at a place, never really belonged anywhere, and
Hmm.
maybe Christianity is a part of that. But I do remember like the very first time that I became born again. Like I was maybe like 14 or 15, and right away I started seeing or noticing like spiritual warfare happening. But even prior to that, I can recall many times where I had instances where I had sort of like had like these intrusive thoughts about like hurting my bullies because I had a lot of bullies back then, and what do you
Hmm.
know, they're all guys. All the guys wanted to bully me for some reason.
Imagine that. Yeah.
Just, I don't really understand it. Um, so,
Hmm.
yeah, but I think like even from like an atheistic standpoint or from like a Satanist perspective, I think we all just kind of have like an understanding or even just like a love for the concept of good versus evil. So, I think that's also where like my love of darkness came from as well.
Okay, that's an interesting answer. Honestly, I'm very I wouldn't describe myself as like a LaVeyan Satanist or anything like that. I like the Satanic Bible. If you don't know what that is, it's a book of like essentially divine humanism. It posits that there is no such thing as God or the devil. However, because religion is used as this tool of oppression, and because the Bible has lots of faults, we don't need it. We're better off considering man as God himself. And I'm probably going to cut this, by the way, because this is way off topic. I'm just
Yeah.
clarifying some stuff. Like,
Right.
as such, Satan becomes a tool resistance, And though you
Right.
don't worship the devil, you're like, I understand that guy. LaVeyan Satanism is like, what makes you happy? What matters to you? I'm very nihilistic personally.
Right.
I believe that there's no inherent value in things. We have to impose that ourselves, which we do
Right.
as humans. We do that. I mean, if my Shadow the Hedgehog plushie, caught fire, I would cry because he's very valuable to me. He's my emotional support bear. And
Yeah.
but in reality, it's what? Fluff and fuzz. So do you have any words of wisdom for those who use the words of, Christ and the prophets, the biblical prophets, as weapons against LGBTQI plus people or other minorities and religions? We're also living in pretty frightening times right now.
Right.
What would you say to people who are on board with this because Mr. Trump seems to LARP as a Christian?
Right. I get what you mean. I think the biggest problem in Christianity or in the church is that there are a lot of like lukewarm Christians, like people who claim to be Christian when they're not. Those are the kinds of people that they go to the church every Sunday, but then they sleep with the devil, say like 6 days out of the week. That's just the way that I kind of envision it.
Mm,
And it's unfortunate because it is written that there are more lukewarm Christians than there are true Christians. And it's very sad because, and this is just how I feel about the influence that words have. It's kind of like when my father had always said that words only have power if you give it power.
hmm.
So you can either but you can apply this to anything. You can apply it to religion. You can apply it to, like racism or homophobia or transphobia. So, like, if something that somebody says does bother you, you have free will. That is the one thing that God gave us that he didn't even give his angels. So if something like I say were to bother you, you don't have to listen. You don't have to agree because you in the end you have a voice, you have a say, and you are your own person. But what I believe as a Christian, and it's the very same philosophy that Jesus has, is that you shouldn't just love your neighbor, but you should love your enemy as well. But you should also be, and I'm not like telling you what to do. I'm just speaking in general. But people need to be more forgiving and more loving and be merciful. Like we have to be merciful because the very same people that is projecting hatred by using, God's name in vain is no
Mm-hmm.
different than like a terrorist organization or somebody who does promote violence. It's all the same, whether it's coming from your mouth or whether it's a knife trying to stab somebody. It's no different. It's all the same.
Words have a lot of power. Yeah.
Yep.
You know, um, Wars start over words. It's true.
Yeah.
It's very sad. I think that if people were more intellectually honest, we'd have a much happier world. And I do want to clarify that when you say they go to church on Sunday and then they go to bed with the devil, you're not talking about the devil I was talking about with like this humanistic idea of whatever. You're talking about our worst impulses.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, the biblical Satan who wants the worst for us. As it were.
Yeah.
As it were. So yeah. Okay. So, getting off that track, how long have you been writing? I mean, you've mentioned a few things here. Um, but how when did you start?
Ooh, very great question. I've been writing for a really long time. If it wasn't, little old me writing like love letters to my crushes, I would write like, I don't know, just like silly little phrases in my books, or I would draw just whatever would come to mind. I think one of the very first fictional stories I wrote, I think I was in sixth grade, so like 11 or 12. And throughout middle school and high school, I wasn't even like serious about my writing. It was just
Hmm.
more like personal. I didn't get serious and start thinking about getting published until I was in college, and I was actually pursuing a business degree, out of all things. So I think when you had discovered my work, like a lot of people seem to really think that I'm like an English major or I'm like a poetry major, and I'm like, no, I'm far from it. I was a business student.
Listen, bitches got to eat. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
I have a joke. I used to tell all the time. Like, there's a difference between a poet and a park bench. A park bench can support a small family. So yeah, like so that's understandable. What made you drop the? Are you still a business major? Like, what are you doing? Are you in college right now?
I graduated a long time ago, like December of
I don't know.
2022.
I don't assume people's ages. I'm just asking.
Yeah.
So yeah. So what did you end up, graduating with?
I graduated with a bachelor's degree in supervision and management.
Cool. Okay, so you
Yeah.
did get that business degree then.
I did.
Cool. I mean, do you have any goals, broadly speaking, for your writing career, or is it just something that you do in a kind of ecstatic way?
Oh, that's another really good question. I do have a couple of goals. My main goal is to, obviously to get published. I would think that's any writer's goal.
Well,
But yeah, I think my other goal would be to sort of like become an inspiration for other writers, because there are a lot of, writers out there that they're looking to start somewhere, or maybe they don't know necessarily what to do, and I just want to inspire people.
sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say that success is a highly relative term, I
Hmm.
mean, I self publish my own books, and, you know, I mean, not exactly lighting the world on fire, right? I mean, I have my readers, of course, but,
Yeah.
I've kind of learned that, like, sometimes the work in and of itself is its own reward, but that's part of why I started Death Wish, because I myself am an independent writer, and I found a lot of happiness in doing that. And, it's essentially a way to inspire people to make art, especially considering how sad people are these days, how just broken society feels. I think the career is kind of a loaded term. We often feel like we're spinning our wheels even when we're actively publishing and collaborating. And I say that as myself, as King Loki, like,
Right.
what does career really mean to you? You know, like if you have even thought about that, the
Right.
word, like,
Right. So when I think of a career, like a writing career, it sounds more like almost like a job. Like you're getting paid to do it, getting paid to do something that you don't want to do. Like you gotta wake up at like what, 8 o'clock in the morning, you gotta drive to work. You're gonna be miserable the whole time, and then you're gonna come home and it's gonna be the whole ritual again. But I don't really see writing to be a job.
mm-hmm.
I kind of see it more as like, I don't know if a lifestyle is like a great way of putting it, but it just comes naturally to me because I very much enjoy it. It
Mm-hmm.
would be nice if I got paid to write, or
Wow.
if I got, imagine all of us getting paid to write short stories, poems, plays, reviews,
What do you think? This is
shoot,
Finland or something?
essays, novels. That would be fantastic. But it is, as much as it is fun writing your own works, it is a lot of work
Mm-hmm.
because it does take up a lot of your time, and it's got to be time that you dedicate to it. And if you don't, you end up like procrastinating, and then it just keeps getting put off and put off and put off. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, what you're describing really is art. I mean,
Yeah.
like, I don't think I've ever written a novel in a single draft. I mean, and especially with a poem. I mean, I've had to scrap what I was writing like several times, even with
Yeah.
like a 5-line poem. Those are some of the worst. I mean, for fuck's sake. I mean,
Yeah.
you would think that you could write it in one go, but yeah, no, 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 no. It is an art. It is essentially a craft. And just because you're not getting paid for it doesn't mean it's not your life. I
Right.
have always said writing is my life. Even when I was working like in retail as like a college student, and I'd have people go, "Oh, it's not. It's not your life. You don't get paid for it." And I'm like, "Oh, what? Is Old Navy your life? Is folding clothes your life? Does
Yeah,
that
exactly.
does that define you? Like, if you're fucking building model train sets in your basement, why can't that be your life?
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
I'd even take like those people that say, "Oh, my kids are my life." Well, yeah, I mean you're investing in them. There's some value there. Working for a corporation is not your life. Like,
Yeah.
but people are gonna find fulfillment where they find it, right? And you know, we so happen to be people who find it in our art. And I believe, as Nietzsche believed, that art is essentially our salvation. It's
Yeah.
how we express ourselves and share well, what makes us, our souls, as it were, with one another. Um, so yeah, I think I mean, it would be nice if we were paid for what we do, but that's not why we do it, is the key
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
And hey, if we find, as writers, if we find our audiences, great. If we don't, as a wise rabbi once said to me, also great.
Yeah, exactly.
So as I said, poetry and art, they can be described as salvation by wiser and more prolific writers than I. Has writing saved you in specific ways? You know?
Yeah. I would say every single time that I've written something, it has saved me in one way or another. Like, for example, like one of the questions I think maybe you've asked me before is if I had any projects that I was working on.
Yeah.
For any of my followers that follow me on Instagram, pretty sure people know or vaguely know that I'm working on a memoir in verse. So, a memoir in verse is kind of like a biography or an autobiography, but instead of it being traditional or formal, you're writing in more of like a poetic fashion. So a lot of what I'm writing is new poetry, but I'm also writing my own plays, and there's a little bit of prose as well.
Cool. Interesting. Um, did you want to tell us about your other projects? You can expand as much as you'd like. I mean, I'd love to hear about them personally.
That's the one that I'm currently working on. I have worked on other projects before. There was another story that I wrote. It was more of a fictional story. I
Mm-hmm.
tried for so long to like push it to a couple of publishers and it just didn't work out. So I just decided like, let me just work on something else and maybe I'll
Mm-hmm.
come back to it later on. But never get rid of your written stuff. Never delete any of your drafts because
Mm-hmm.
even if it might be terrible now, but it might not be so terrible a year from now or 5 years from now or 10 years from now. So,
No, no, you're right. I mean, I have this werewolf novel I was working on when I was like when I was in my 20s. And now that I'm writing like, these dark fantasy novels, I'm thinking about resurrecting it in that world because
yeah.
yeah, like that would be cool. Now the context changes and I'm also a much more mature and advanced writer. So like
Right.
yeah, I agree. I have a kind of I have this rule about art. We're not allowed to throw away art in this house. So
Right.
I agree with that. What did I want to ask you? Let me look at my sheet here. Okay, we are at 30 minutes, so we can wrap up whenever you're ready. But let me see. Let me just make sure I don't have something else. Because I asked you about your other pieces. Oh, yeah. So I think it's worth asking. So, a memoir, right? Like I'm not thinking about writing a memoir. I'm 34, going on 35. I feel like that's kind of young. Have I lived a dramatic and interesting life worth telling people about? Probably. But I feel like, until I reach 50, like, I'm not old enough to be telling people whatever. But that's just my opinion. What inspired you to write a memoir at your age? I'm assuming you're not 54, you know?
Well, I'm 23 going on 24. Um, so I'm not necessarily writing about my entire life. Interestingly enough, I'm actually writing about my writing journey. And I think you might actually like my story because I do use the theme of good and evil, but I mostly use or talk about demons, the devil, the serpent, little things like that because I guess I'll be real short and sweet with it, but a long time ago, even before I got a business degree, I took a couple of creative writing courses, and I'm not going to give any credit to this person, but I had a professor once. Upon me meeting this person, aside from the typical, like, usual advice that maybe an educator would give to their student, like, they talked about, like low residency MFA programs, they talked about marketing, business, all the usual stuff. But within that same discussion, that person had basically told me that I wouldn't get published or I wouldn't succeed or my life would be difficult or terrible because I'm a woman, and I'm just like, what are you talking about?
Hmm.
But it was from that little experience that I had
Mm-hmm.
that I believe, I don't want to say like a portal open, but when I think of the spiritual realm, I do truly believe that like angels and demons, they have the power to see things that we can't see with the naked eye. So imagine like imagine we don't have an aura, but we have like a shield.
Okay.
And let's just say like when something traumatic happens, like let's say, like somebody goes through some kind of abuse or they go through some kind of trauma, suddenly there's like these little cracks in that shield or whatever you want to call it. And the devil or demons can try to just like slip through the cracks, try to interfere with your life, try to distract you or destroy you in whatever ways that they can. And I do believe that that was what's going on throughout my writing journey. A lot of the influences that I had or a lot of the writings that I did, it wasn't about God. It was about like the devil, or it was about like these sort of like demonic things. There were even things that I started doing, like I started becoming a lot more angry or a lot more aggressive, or I became rebellious, and it's just not my character at all. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, it was that very incident, which I call it the incident, that inspired The World Hated Me First. Um, in
Right,
fact, the
right.
in fact, the fourth section, which I call it the incident, that was the very first section I ever wrote. I wrote it that same night when I got home after that day.
It was this guy basically not giving you anything constructive and just telling you, like, yo, get out of here.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. But I had forgotten about that at the time, and what that person did was, despite giving me like all this like really cool advice, because at that point I knew that I wanted to be an author, but I did not know exactly where to start. I did not have social media at the time, so I didn't have Instagram, I didn't have Facebook, and I only knew one person who was a published author. So I basically went to that person like, hey, I'm looking to be an author. Can you help me? So
yeah.
I don't really remember like a lot that took place, but it's usually like the bad things that happen that's like what you remember most, which is just so sad and it's so unfortunate. Um, but I do remember going home that night, and I took time out of my day to write a letter of appreciation. It was nothing more than that. It was like, hey, thank you for, for being a mentor and whatnot. And that was when everything just kind of fell apart. And that person was like, what you had sent me was inappropriate. It was unprofessional. You shouldn't send something like this to a professor. Get away from me.
Mm.
Like, they went as far as to tell me, I don't want you to come by my office anymore. I don't want you reaching out to me. Just stay the hell away from me.
Yeah.
So that's when, like, all the emotions started taking place, because I didn't know what the heck, like, why this person would react the way that they did. But it's fine because I'm writing about it. And I think out of all the stories that I've ever written, probably because this event that took place is based on true events, this is probably the most, like, hardcore, and, like, it's got a lot of raw emotions. There's a lot that takes place, but I do believe that once it's out there and once it's published, I do believe that you would enjoy it. I do believe there's a lot of other people that would enjoy it. In fact, I actually shared my story, like my entire story, not obviously not the written version, to another one of our contributors. His name is Jack Brennan. You probably already know him.
I know Jack. Yeah.
He
Yeah.
actually told me that like, one of his favorite authors gone through the same, if not similar, experiences as I have, where this author was told by their professor that they would never get published or they would never make it. So out of spite, that author went and got published, but also would go to, like, his professor's office, or, like, to, like, the mailbox outside his office, and leave published copies of his books. And I think that's absolutely just,
Yeah.
it's great.
It's petty in a really, really impish way. You gotta love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, have you thought about, like, self-publishing? I mean, I self-published my Demonland novels. I self-published my Dream of the Ash, my book of poetry. I mean, it's definitely
Yeah.
something to do. I mean, you just got to promote it yourself. That's the key. You don't have a corporation behind you, You don't have
Right.
a publisher behind you, so,
But yeah, to answer your question, I have thought about self-publishing.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't know whether I wanted to self-publish or just traditionally publish, this book that I'm working on. But I know there are pros and cons to both. Like, I know with self-publishing, I think you get more of your royalties, but at the same time, you're also shelling out a bunch of money. Like, if you're wanting somebody to do, like, your cover art, you gotta hire somebody. If you want someone to edit, you gotta hire somebody. So it almost seems like it's a lot of work.
I mean, I do my own editing, but
Yeah.
not everyone is as effective at it as I am, and people do pay for that kind of thing. Formatting's an issue. Cover art is probably my biggest expense, although behind me is actually a cover that my co-host did for my first book. I redid the cover, but those are concerns. I will say that the biggest downside to traditional is, well, you just might never get picked up because it's so competitive. Like, I got tired of my stuff sitting in the slush pile. I was like, I could be writing my second book, like. So I just started self-publishing because the writing was more important than getting published to me. It was just like, this is a waste of my time, because
Right,
a
exactly.
lot of publishers are risk averse. They see that your book has demons or werewolves in it, and, oh, that's not popular right now, or, oh, can you make the character a teenager? Oh, can you do that? And it's just like, I don't know. You're dealing with corporate America at that point, and I don't have time for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, fair enough. I mean, being a writer is fucking hard, and deciding what to do with your work it's as hard as writing at times. And yeah, I would love to see your memoir. I think it sounds fantastic, and I will say that if you self-publish it, I mean, we would be very happy to, like, make a post about it or something, because you're one of our writers at this point. Like, actually, our social media sorceress, Ashley, she was like, when she was making the copy for this post, she was like, she wrote former writers. Are you one of our? I was like, no. Are you one of our writers? Like, like, these are people that are, they remain our writers. Like, this is not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So if you end up publishing that, let us know. I mean, we'd love to, at least reference it. I would love to see what you do with that. I would also be very open to like, I don't know, taking a look at it. Like one of our writers, Dustin, um, he's written a few pieces for us. He actually interviewed a wrestler for the winter edition. Incredibly badass piece. He's such a cool guy, Dustin. He has a werewolf novel that I'm reading right now. You know what I mean? And he's not part of the workshop or anything. So, just saying, more than happy to take a look at it. What I wanted to say was, in wrapping up, did you have any, books you'd want to recommend
Any books that I recommend?
or writers or anything really?
Ooh, that's a very good question. Well, I do follow quite a few self-published authors. One of my favorite authors actually goes by Ant Richards. He's actually the one author that I interviewed myself. So he currently resides, I believe, in London. He is also a fiction writer. He wrote a couple of books, like I believe on paperback, it's In Your Dreams, and there is an anthology that he wrote called Damned If I Don't, Short Thrills. My favorite story in that one is called No Easy Answer. It's so ridiculous. It's so funny. But there's also quite a few stories where it's not like all fun. Like he writes like maybe like psychological thrillers. There's a mafia story in there. There's a sad story in there. So you get to really like have a pick at like what you like to read.
Yeah.
But he also he mainly does audiobook narrators, which that's something I've been told that I should do. Even some of my followers on Instagram, like what I'm trying to do on Instagram, and maybe I might try to do it on YouTube. I'm not really sure, but I'm trying to do like readings of either my own work or other people's work, and a lot of people seem to really enjoy that. And even like my own family is like, hey, you should think about doing audiobooks because there is a market for that. And if you do it the right way, you can attract a lot of people to listen to your works. And a lot of people seem to really like it when I write. It's been like that for as long as I can remember.
I say just do things. I mean, my sign off on the Demon Toast podcast is always just write poetry, make art,
Right.
just do things. That's what I say. I mean, I will tell you that, the most attention I ever get is when I talk about Marilyn Manson because, man, his fans, they just do not want to fucking let it go. It's crazy, It's like, oh, he got away with it. He didn't do it. It's like, what are you talking about, man? We live in America. Like, of course he got away with it. He had a
Right.
higher paid lawyer. But no, yeah, just do things, man, Read your books. I mean, review books on YouTube. Why the fuck not? Everyone else is doing it, It's free.
Yeah, exactly.
It's free. Like, it doesn't cost anything, That's cool. That's good. So, all right. Yeah, so where can people find you? Obviously we'll have links below. Do look at those, but do you have a website or anything like that, or just your Instagram?
I don't have a website. I do have, my Instagram, but I also have a Facebook as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And it sounds like you're very communicative with your community, as it were. And yeah, I mean, you're awesome. People should definitely be interacting with you and trying to collaborate with you. So, Marisa Jade, check her out, or else, or I'll come get you. I'm King Loki, of course. Check out deathwishpoetry.com, or don't. I'll come get you if you don't, though. And that's about that. This has been our author spotlight. Right. Hey, thanks so much for watching that. Our writers are the lifeblood of what we do here, and I really hope that something inspired you from what they said, because they've all been very insightful and fascinating in their own way. Listen, we do take submissions. We are quarterly, and if you want to know when our physical edition is coming out or when our digital edition is open for submissions, please check us out on Instagram, link below, or go to our website. We're usually pretty loud about it. Also, if you want to support us, if you join our Patreon at the $1, level, or any level really, I will personally send you one of these really cool stickers. And they're pretty big. They're pretty high quality. So, put them on your car. Put them on your back. Put them on your wall. I don't know. Put them somewhere. Or head over to Great Satan's Emporium and buy a super cool mug or a t-shirt. And, support us. It helps to support independent art. And, well, stay tuned for what comes next. Most likely more interviews and always more Demon Toast episodes and episodes of Monster Fangs as well. So, Ave Satanis.